Yeah, I don't talk to audiences. I'm sorry, I don't. But I have Lochlin Cross on the show today. No, I Lochlin. Yeah, there you go. This is what I wanted to talk to you about, but later in the show. Um, I don't know how to talk to these people. I don't know how to look at this little circle on my computer and pretend that there's like people there.
Oh, we're live? Are we
Yeah,
live?
yeah.
We're not just
See?
recording?
Because I'm not the guy that's good. Watch, this is what I would do if I was trying. Hey, my name is James DiFiore, and welcome to Blackballed, the podcast. I am bald. I am not black. This is Lochlin Cross.
Well,
I don't know.
You know what's interesting about the whole live versus recorded thing is I've been doing this a long time, and I can't explain it. There is this muscle that kicks in, or this thing that when you're live just takes over when you've been doing it long enough.
Yeah.
If you're recording, it has a different feel. And if you're on a podcast and you're going live with guys that have done radio for a long time, you'll feel the difference.
Oh, I did. When I started with you and Dean.
Yes.
That was like the greatest. Okay, let me not. I don't want to like inflate your 5 beer soaked brain right now, but like it was a in my quieter moments I was like, this is pretty dope. Like I'm just tossed in with these two veterans, and I think I'm not matching their experience clearly, in the sense that like you guys have been doing it for a long time, but I was able to find my own little nook, I guess you could say, and and try to do that as well as I could. The talking to the audience thing, funny enough, when I was doing slam poetry for like 10 years, not as like my main thing, but like once a month go to like a contest or a club or something like that where people snap their fingers between verses, and I would go up there and do really like edgy shit when everyone else was talking about the love and I was like dropping straight hip-hop acapellas, right? And everyone was like, I don't know how to take this person, right? And but I had stage fright, like mad stage fright at the beginning. And to get over it, I went to Union Station in Toronto, and there's like, I don't know what it is, like 12 stops when you get to Bloor. And I would do a piece in the middle of rush hour from Union to the next stop. Then I'd get out. Then I'd get back on again when the next train come, and I'd do a piece to the next stop. So I'd just be like belting out this verse in the middle of a crowded subway train to get over my stage fright. And that's and that's what honestly, it was awful at the beginning. Holy crap.
I don't know if I could do that.
Oh, like, now I could do anything now.
Tell me what you want. There's levels of stage fright. Like I've had different versions of it over the years. I had it at the beginning of my career in radio. Just going on the radio, I was nervous. I've had it because I played in bands. I've had it in that. I've had it doing different things outside of the radio station where people are sitting in front of you, right? And that has dwindled over the years as well. The thing that I'm still terrified to do is sing, because I'm not very good at singing, and I've had to sing a couple of times in some of the bands that I've been in where I've had to like do backup vocals, and I don't know why. But I've never been like a lead singer or anything like that. But I just and karaoke is just terrifying to me. The idea of standing up there by yourself and singing a song that somebody else has already sung, and everybody has an expectation of how that song is supposed to sound, terrifying to me. So the fact that you were able to jump, that's next level. If you've accomplished that. Oh, also stand up. I've done stand up once.
It's on my bucket list.
That's terrifying.
I can imagine. It could be so like, I can imagine it being super, super scary. And if you bomb, you just feel it all over your body and in your mind.
Oh, God.
But I bet you if you nail a joke and the whole crowd laughs, there's probably no better feeling you've ever had. Like even
there's highs and lows in that, right?
Yeah. There's no in between really. And the in between, you don't get noticed. Like, it's so funny because, and I don't want to talk about him at all, but it's funny to me that I've learned a lot about stand-up culture from listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, but I don't think he's funny at all. Like he's like known as a podcaster, a UFC commentator, and a comedian, but he was a comedian first, and I think that's how he identifies. And I think he doesn't crack the top 500 as funny men to me. Like
I'm in the same boat with you. I've
Yeah.
seen his stand up. It has no appeal to me at all.
he shouts in a way that's awkward,
Well, and
like it's just
like Kevin James is not funny to me
no he's
at
not.
all.
No.
And he's quite popular. There's a handful of comedians out there that are like wildly. Dane Cook was never funny to me
when he was popular, but he was also very unpopular among comedians.
Yes.
So I don't know what that means, but maybe you can, because I feel like comedian culture is something I know a ton about. Like I read biographies of people like Richard Pryor, and like I've watched a bunch of like I read something about Jerry Seinfeld, about how he
I don't find Jerry particularly funny. I find
him dated. He's dated now.
His show in the comedians in cars getting caught, whatever the hell, the worst named show ever.
Comedians using cheap production to make profits. Is that
show is, I like that show though.
Do you?
I do, because
the guest has to shine in that show. And that's what I don't like about it. Jerry could be awesome, but if his guest sucks, it's not a good show.
I'm still a fan. No, there's something different and unique about it. And it's appealing to me because it wasn't what I expected to get from Seinfeld. He seems like he wants too much control over stuff, right?
Yeah. Well,
and so for me, that show was kind of, I don't know, refreshing a bit, because it looked like he let go a bit and let like the guest sort of drive the car.
Yeah, because I can visualize him very easily laughing at his guest, or with his guest or whatever, instead of carrying the humor. Did you ever? So you did stand up once.
So I'll never do it again.
Give me one of the jokes. Do you remember any of them?
One was, I do remember one because it keeps coming back. There is a radio station in town. It was a radio night.
Okay.
So it was a bunch of radio and media people from around the city, and it's a yearly thing. And one of the jokes and the audience is all radio people. So I sort of tailored my set to the industry, right? And I sort of took some shots at a couple of the jocks in town and other radio personalities, some that I knew would be okay with it and some that I knew that wouldn't be okay with it. And there's a radio station in town, Now Radio, that everybody in the business absolutely hates because they've had wild success and they've sort of gone against the grain. And it just drives all the program directors crazy. So if you work for another radio station or another radio company that doesn't own this Now brand, you are guaranteed to have at least a weekly, if not a monthly conversation about this damn radio show and why it's successful. I don't get it. Like, it drives.
Are they edgy? What are they?
No, they're not. They figured out they've got some formula, and we don't even have enough time to get into why or why not they're the joke was something about them being talking for 7 minutes about Tupperware. I can't
It's not funny because it's funny.
I was riffing, right? Which is what I do.
Cool, Daddy-O. Tell me how you were.
And riffing. The organizer of the event, came to me afterwards and said, "I know you didn't win the night because it's a competition, but he goes, you had the best joke." And
really,
and he told me it was about the Now Radio thing, right?
So
but he was also in the industry.
So was the audience like, were they a powerful entity where the audience was sort of like afraid to clap? Like, oh, they took a shot at
No.
It was the Tupperware.
There was some booze. There was some clapping. Like people were drunk. It was good. It was fine.
I thought you bombed. I thought you made it seem like you bombed. That would have been awesome, dude. Apparently bombing is a whole different type of adrenaline, where if you're in it, Like if you're in it as a comedian,
I
you
didn't
bomb.
bomb,
No. Okay. Well, that's good.
but to
'Cause you're
me
not a
it
comedian.
wasn't worth the angst. Like I don't need it in my life enough. I don't want to do it enough in my life to go through the anxiety of getting out on stage, sitting in the back, waiting for your turn. Like it's not me. It's not my life.
It's
I
sort of the like performance version of like bungee jumping off a bridge,
It is,
you know?
and the thing is, I think I could probably figure out a way to make it work because like, I have enough bits that I do on a regular basis. You've heard them all, that I
Some of
could
them are mine. Just
so
kidding.
I could probably, work enough material into an act that would work, but again,
Yeah. I feel like I
it's an
want to
art
try
form,
like
man.
I want to try to see if I can do 20 minutes where I like polish the hell out of it. Um and then you see Bullard has never written a joke. Don't you find that crazy? Like he doesn't do any prep. He doesn't, and this is probably why some people love him and some people don't think he's funny. But that's what he does. He's like the only comedian that I could find that does the same thing. He doesn't write bits. So if he has a show at Yuck Yucks, he's just hanging out. Yep, got a show at Yuck Yucks, but there's no prep. He just goes there. He's a how you doing guy, and he riffs for an hour, and that's what he does. And that's all he's ever done. And that's why that at the beginning,
That's a
when
gift.
it's crazy. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I don't know. I probably told you this before, but for anyone that's not heard this story, when I first met Bullard, we were and when I first met him in person, we were up at that what you call a brokeback cabin somewhere in the middle of the forest, but it was actually a really nice beach house right on the beach. There was no forest anywhere. But I told him, I'm like, yeah, I went to your show once when I was like 19. And I got to be honest with you, Bullard, I didn't find it funny. I never found his show funny. And the reason why, I remember thinking it at the time, the audience was never laughing when you watched him on TV. It was always a smattering or something, you know. And I was you know, I was busting his balls, right? And he was like, I could tell you why that was, why you didn't hear any laughter. Because I remember going to the show and I told him in Sauble Beach that I remember being in the studio audience and laughing, and everyone was laughing. But then I remember going home and watching it because you know how you do that? You go to a taping of something, then you watch it.
Yeah, yeah.
I went to watch it, couldn't hear any laughter. And he was like, yeah, because they would never spring for a crowd mic. He's like, I put it in the production sheet every single year. He said, we need a crowd mic. We need a crowd mic. And they never gave it to him. And so that's why Bullard seemed unfunny when you're watching on television. But when you see him live, even today, like he's funny.
So I watched that show when I was younger, not religiously, but I remember being a fan of his. And I was at a Canadian Music Week and he hosted the awards show. I think it was the awards show. And he came out and I was crying. Like it was one of the funniest MC jobs I've ever seen in
No
my
prep.
life. I know nothing about this guy, but what he said and he took shots at people in the room you're not supposed to take shots at. And I think that was part of the reason why it was so funny, because no one was safe. I mean, there was some really high powered industry people in that room, and he took a shot at all of them. And that kind of bravery, I think, is part of the reason why I respected him.
Yeah.
And I watched his show, and over the years, I've met people that have had varying and severe opinions of that show one way or the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing I liked about that show was his ability to sit in the awkward. And it's something
Yeah.
I've actually learned about, and I use it. And I don't know if I completely 100% got it from Bullard, but he had this way of throwing something out there, and I wish I had some examples, and just sitting there and stewing on the awkwardness of it.
Yeah.
And it would die. And he didn't blink. He didn't move. He had no problem with it just sitting there dying.
That's it right there.
Anybody else, you could see they would get pulled into the awkwardness of it. He didn't. He would sit there and just revel in it. He had no problem being funny. He had no problem being awkward. He had no problem with anybody not having absolutely no idea what he was talking about. And I do that. And it's moments, I have moments like that on the show where I will do it to a guest or Jimmy, and I'll sit there and just let it simmer.
You've done that to me.
It drives people crazy.
I believe you've done that to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason why it's good is because it's memorable.
Yeah.
And anytime anybody walks away from any kind of content and they can remember what it was, whether it was funny or it made them uncomfortable, is still entertainment.
Yeah. You know why you can tell that I'm not in radio? Because sometimes there's been these pockets, like a couple weeks here or a week there or whatever, where I've literally been like, I'm going to find a fucking way to get Dean. I'm going to find a way to get Lochlin. There's going to be a grifting happening, and it's going to take weeks, and I'm going to get them so fucking bad. And then my mind goes like this. What if it bombs? What if no one gets it? What if you like standing out there by yourself and nobody understands what the fuck you're doing? And so I never really engage. I don't know how to be like, because you guys are kind of like these really mild pranksters in a sense. And you don't even need to collude with each other to work off each other against the person that, and it's awesome. And the first time it happened, I was like, what the fuck is wrong with these motherfuckers? Like, I thought you guys were like, and then, then I felt stupid. I'm like, well, of course they were like, they were, it was like a bit, and it was like a freestyle bit.
Yeah.
And it's so weird because I can't define exactly, like, I don't know what to call it. It's just like, there's almost like, like you nod to Dean, but you don't nod. You just can tell, like you'll say something and he'll say something right away. He's like, good point, Lochlin. And then all of a sudden you guys are established. It's melded together, and target assassin hilarity will ensue. It'll be great. And then the guy's like, what the fuck just happened? You know what I mean?
Well, unfortunately, what ends up happening, if you're in this business for any length of time, you get comfortable behind a mic, you will start to see and weaknesses. That's not the best way of describing it, but
describe it like the way you would, like, because I think lack of experience,
Well, if somebody reacts to something a certain way, we can pick up right away on whether or not there's anything worth sort of digging into. And
you mean like James getting annoyed and angry?
Yes. And so if you can sort of see somebody's, again, weakness isn't necessarily the best way of putting it, but if they react a certain way or they have a look or whatever, and it automatically can change the direction of the conversation, and you got to sort of keep going on that path. And Dean and I are good at that. We're good at exploiting guests, and we're good at exploiting people in the room. Yes.
Yeah.
And the reason,
go ahead.
The reason why you might not pick up on it is because you came into this whole thing from a different perspective, right? Like you jumped into the podcasting world without like a background in broadcasting.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not aware of some of the, you're not aware of some of your weaknesses, right?
Oh, well, I am now. And that's the thing.
We've highlighted a number of your weaknesses, and we do exploit them on occasion.
Dare I ask? No, but I know where listen, you know what's hilarious? I'm going to tell you this. I said I wasn't going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you. Like, I have a real big problem with direct message communication. Like, I don't like it. I always feel like I'm talking about myself or just busting balls, and that's it. Right. So then I notice it. And then I wonder, am I coming off like a guy that only talks about himself, like some sort of narcissist? So then anything that I type after I have that thought is just awkward. I'm like, this is awkward because I am not the same person. For some reason, I can't find myself when I'm chatting with a bunch with like 5 people in a thread. I don't know what I'm supposed to be typing. I don't
Group
know.
chat.
Yeah, I'm not good at group chat. Like, put me in a room with you guys, it'll be awesome. But on group chat, there's something that happens where I'm just, I don't know. It becomes like I like to read body language. That's probably it. Like, I'm the kind of guy that like my resume might not impress you, but the interview will.
Yeah,
You know.
that makes sense.
And so like I guess it was like a few weeks ago or a month ago, nothing actually even happened. But I'm sitting here for like 3 days wondering, like, did my DMs make Lochlin go, oh, let's put James in this box over here? And then I was like, no, but you're thinking of yourself again. And then I was like, fuck.
Not at all. No,
I know, because
you're overthinking it.
I know I am, and that's what I do, right?
Yeah. But that's common. Like, we all do this. If you're in a situation, if you're in a, and I've tried to explain this to people over the years, like friends of mine that have or are embarrassed about something that they did at a party or whatever. You go into a room, there's 10 people in that room, and something happens. It doesn't even matter what happens. Okay. And it could be fairly innocent, but you go to work the next day and it's on your mind. Yeah. You said something. It doesn't even matter what it was. It's way worse in your mind because you're worried about what everybody else thought. What you're forgetting is that everybody else left that party and they're all worried about how they came off. I've used this numerous times in my life to get over the shit that I've been worried about in a business situation, right? If I said something or I was too loud or whatever, most people leave because we're all worried about how we came off. Every one of those people in that party left and they're in the cab on the way home worried about what happened and what they said and how everybody viewed them.
Even if you're the guy that like puked in the punch bowl or something,
there's something extreme,
you're the streaker. No, what did you do that night?
For sure. But if it's just fairly casual interaction with other people, other human beings, that's fine. Unfortunately, I also have a number of friends like you and like James where everybody is talking about Jimmy, the little person on the show. It's pretty much every social interaction we have, we leave there all talking about James.
See, you're busting balls right now, right?
Well, I am, but you are also a little bit of that. You have a little bit of that where for whatever reason, you feel the need to make sure that, and you don't even want it, but we leave the party going, fucking DiFiore, did you hear what he did last night? Or did you see what he did last night?
I want people to say that. I want people to know what I did last night.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as it was good.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tried watching the podcast where there was 2 of them, I guess, where I blew up. I'm surprised there's only 2, to be honest. Given my life and what's going on in my life right now, I'm like, 2? Oh, well done, James. Good job. But it's kind of cringy, but I know it's good content. But now I don't get mad anymore. I'll get a little annoyed. You'll see it on my face, but I won't. If you were like, oh, James, and maybe, and you'll say something to push the buttons, I don't think you could push them anymore. I think I could just like laugh it off and deflect it away to something else or do a quick one-liner and just get out of it. Like you can't bust the balls of the guy who's laughing, can you? Well, you can in a certain sense.
You can.
But if I'm just like, okay, dude, like
the one thing about you, and this is similar to other people that I've worked with in the past, is you're worried about your contribution to the to whatever it is that we're doing.
I
Whether it's a
want to add
radio show,
value to the content.
you
all
want
the
to
time.
add value. So you come into it and you want to be a part of the show. And the one thing that the one sort of teaching thing that I have had in the past with people is that you have to one, you have to figure out who you are. Two, you have to be comfortable with who that person is. You have to be comfortable with who you are. And three, in a entertainment perspective, you have to realize what it is that you bring to the table, and you have to be comfortable with it. And some days your contribution is going to be more than like, and it happens to me. Like some days I'm just the passenger on these podcasts.
It's because of your
And
phone.
then,
I'm really happy that you're not on your phone, at least noticeably.
yeah. And then there's other days where I feel like I had a big part in it, that I was like a major contributor to it. And then there's some days, and this has all happened in recent memory, on the podcast that we do with Blundell, and there's a cast of characters that he brings in there.
Mhm.
There's some days where there was one there a couple of weeks ago where I was like, I was over the top. I was too involved. I was interjecting at the wrong times. And I literally, at the end of it, I literally sent a note to everybody going, listen,
I saw that.
I was over the top today. I was way too, there was way too much lock in this podcast, and I apologize. Right there. So there's going to be different sort of, you have to be comfortable with that. You can't.
You worked with different women doing morning shows in Edmonton, right? Didn't you? Like at two different times, once with the Bear, I believe, or were they both with the Bear? I'm just asking if one of the last name was Crosby.
I worked with Nicola Crosby,
right,
twice now.
Yeah, and there was someone else, McQueen. Shirley McQueen.
Shirley and I have never done a show together.
Oh, okay. I read something that
she's
said
that she's on Harvard. She's in Harvard broadcasting, and she does Afternoon Drive, but we've never actually sat and shared a mic together.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm asking then, is that anytime you've worked with a woman on air, what kind of tools has that given you to bring to a show like the Blundell Show or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you have to learn more etiquette or patience or something like that in the broadcasting realm in order to, like, you know, navigate waters? Because I mean, it's going to be different. Working with Dean and working with Crosby, probably not the same thing. You know?
Well, the Nicola Crosby experiment was when I first worked with her, it was at Easy Rock in town. And I had just gotten shit canned, well, not that far away from being fired from a job where I was a program director. So I was on this managerial path in radio.
No.
And then when I got fired, that
wasn't your path, right? That you
no.
don't think, okay, yeah.
It was obvious to me once I got the job in Edmonton to run K-Rock, K97, whatever the hell. I don't even know what the hell it's fucking called. Anyway, I got brought from Winnipeg, where I was on the air and I was a program director. I did Afternoon Drive and I was the PD. And they grabbed me to program the radio station in the mall here, and that lasted 16 months before they shit canned me, and it was the worst 16 months of my life. It almost killed me.
Why did you get shit canned?
I deserved to be let go.
Were you just lazy at your job or something? Or
no, oh God, no. That's never me.
Right.
Like, I bleed the station. I work my balls off.
But you're in charge of the playlist that happens at the Edmonton Mall?
There's a mall, and the West
I didn't
Edmonton
know malls
Mall
had a cream list. I didn't know
that. The mall has a radio station in it. Actually, the company that runs the radio station is in the mall. It has nothing to do with the mall.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just the thing over the speaker.
No. It's a real radio station, and it's a heritage radio station. They launched in 1979, and they're classic rock here in town, and they've done quite well over the years. Like, and I ran it, like I said, for 16 months. They shit canned me. I don't know if there's anybody that could sit down and tell you why. It was a difficult time in that building. I didn't do myself any favors by the way that I was trying to program. I went in there and I tried to move them into, I tried to get them to, shortly after I got there, I said, who's our audience, right? Because you want to know who your audience is. And they said, oh, he's 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, drives a truck. He has a job in the trades. Maybe he lays carpet. He's got a couple of teenage kids. He works hard. And I went, no, that's not your guy. Your guy's in his 50s, late 50s, early 60s, and he's saving up for a Harley. And if you want the guy that's 40, we're going to have to start playing some music from, like, they didn't play anything from the 90s. Nothing. Yeah. I mean, it was Guns N' Roses and Ozzy Osbourne, No More Tears was like the early, like, honestly, I swear to God, that was the newest music they played on the radio station. And I'm like, if your guy is 40, we're going to have to ease you into this 90s decade. And we're going to have to.
Wasn't that a tough rebrand for radio though? Like
it is.
Classic rock when we grew up was like Led Zeppelin, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Jimi Hendrix, and stuff like that. And we grew up in the 90s, and all that was new. It's funny, I can't remember what the years is, but right now Nirvana's like
it's a 30-year-old record.
The Nevermind album is older to us now than Woodstock was when Nevermind came out,
dude,
and that blows my mind. Like, you know, because
classic rock is
25 years old.
Has its 25 years, and it's changed. So when I got there in 2006, I said to them, if you want to get that 40-year-old, which they didn't have, the ratings were awful. I said, we're going to have to adjust our playlist, and we're going to have to shift. We're going to have to shift a little bit. I mean, playing No More Tears from Ozzy Osbourne as the newest song on the radio station is not going to work. I mean, if you want to get that younger audience, if you want to move into, you're going to have to adjust musically.
Plus,
so I was the guy that was doing it.
No More Tears,
James. I was the guy that did it first. Okay, so I started to infuse some Nirvana, some Pearl Jam. I started to put some Headstones and some Big Sugars into the playlist instead of jamming Street Hard up their ass all day. And they didn't get it. It didn't make any sense to them. And the funny thing is I think that's one of many reasons why they moved me out and shipped me out of that building. And again, I made a lot of mistakes. I'm not suggesting that I was a saint, but I dug my foot in and my feet in, and I tried to move them into another decade. The funny thing is classic rock, that's where it ended up going. A lot of the classic rock stations in North America ended up doing that 4 or 5 years
now. Yeah.
4 or 5 years after I was trying to do it with K-Rock in town, all the classic rock stations started doing it, and because they started to lose their audience, right? K-Rock was a Lynyrd Skynyrd radio station when I got there. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was the best thing that happened to me because it got me back on the path I should have always been on, which was on air. Yeah. And it got me out of the management side. Two things got me out of the management side of things. One, getting fired from K-Rock as the program director. And two, my wife telling me, that's it, we're not moving anymore. So I had to make it work in Edmonton. So I ended up back on the air, and I ended up on a show in Edmonton with Nicola Crosby at Easy Rock. And that lasted about a year before they flipped me over to the Bear. And then I was on my own at the Bear, and then I ended up taking over Afternoon Drive, and then I moved to Cruise, which is where I am now. When I went to Cruise, I ended up going over there with Nicola Crosby because she was sort of in an interesting point in her career. And I was looking to get into mornings because that was the next evolution of the on-air side thing for me. And so we jumped over to Cruise. They made us an offer. And I will say this.
The morning guy was the star when I was growing up. Like when Dean was doing his thing, like he was the biggest DJ that I knew. You know, like there was like 2 or 3 DJs in Toronto, and he was definitely like
Dean
in the
was one of
top.
the bigger jocks
But
in the
isn't it always
country.
the morning guy? And is that a
It is.
Stern effect thing? Is that
No,
no?
it was way before Stern. It's always been the marquee spot on radio.
Okay. Because I don't
You're
remember any pre Howard Stern radio personalities that were, you know, big and morning guys. Like I just don't remember, you know, because that wasn't my scene. But like,
it has always been the pinnacle show. Like
okay.
if you're in radio and you want to and you want to do this job for any length of time, you got to go. I mean, you're going after mornings.
Because I
That's what you're
find
going.
you guys are either really, not you personally, but like morning guys are either really funny or that Full House kind of funny, where it's not funny at all, but they still tell those kinds of jokes. You know, like,
Unfortunately, there's a lot more of that
yeah.
yeah.
I don't understand that. I don't know. I feel like in radio, the key is not to entertain, but just not to offend. I don't know if I'm wrong about that, but present company excluded, right? Because you guys do whatever you want.
In the present state of radio, you're not wrong. There is this sort of I think we're sort of in a really interesting point in radio right now where there isn't this one attempt at trying to be something in broadcast. I think there's a lot of things being tried and some stuff is working. And then there's also this podcast phenomenon that we're dealing with right now that's pulling a lot of ears away from radio right now. And I think right now radio is in an interesting Dean says the radio is dying, and people have been saying that forever. I don't agree with him on that.
I've already said it's dead.
Yeah.
Dude, every time I see, I don't know if you noticed, but every time on Facebook when I see a radio station ask one of those stupid questions, I'm always like giving some sort of smart ass answer every single time. Like, do you guys do that? Hey, name a fish without the letter A. And it's just like, are you fucking
I don't
joking?
know if ours are that bad. But the whole point is we do the locker room topic of the day. So we break a lot of we have a lot of the like the shticky kind of radio stuff on our show. And here's the thing. Radio isn't necessarily like you said, it's not the Full House thing. That's not dominating. Nothing's dominating radio right now. Everyone's just sort of just trying to hang on to their jobs right now is the sense that I get.
Yeah.
And
but they're not trying though either. Like in general, like those companies that own like 35 stations and they're all playing the cream list. Yeah.
There's a lot of fear in our industry right now. So people are programming and they're creating content based out of fear. And they're also creating content based out of what they think they need to do to make people in the company happy. So there's a lot of there. That's what I'm saying. That's why we're in a flux position right now. There's not there. I think what's going to happen is what I thought was going to happen for years with the music industry. When Napster and all of that stuff came along, what I think ended up happening was what I thought was going to happen was I thought there was going to be this massive independent movement where people on the music side of the business realized, hold on, I create this, I can control this. And listen, I can actually market myself and I might be able to have a successful career without the labels. The labels forgot what they were good at, which was the promotion, because they always made the money by being the bank, and they lost the bank because they bankrupt themselves trying to sue the internet out of existence. And then there was too much focus on that. And then I thought, okay, here's the time. This is the independent movement everyone's waiting for. It never happened.
I think it's happening now.
It's happening now.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen with radio, is that radio is going to figure out that that you can be real, you can be yourself, and you can actually steal from what podcasts, what's been successful with podcasts. You can incorporate that some of that into your radio show, and you can be. It's just taking some time right now because everyone's sitting there still fearful of the big 3 or 4 companies that own all these radio stations that
As they
pay your
should be.
bills.
They
Yeah.
should be. And you know what? The way that you described sort of like that fear, isn't it just completely diametrically opposite of what podcasting is? Like, I feel like I could do almost anything I want.
And that's what's lacking in radio right now.
Right.
Is that sort of that energy that you get from watching and listening to a podcast.
Yeah, and I know I sound like a broken record,
Unfortunately,
but the no ads.
You got the ads
yeah.
is a big thing. Unfortunately, you got a situation right now where radio is sort of down here, and they should be doing more of what the podcast, like from a content perspective, they should be doing that. And podcasts are up here doing that, but they're coming down here where where business is starting to control content because podcasting has become big business. So now all of a sudden, these guys that are on these podcasts all of a sudden have to start to answer to the guys that are pulling the money strings. You're seeing it right now with Rogan.
I'm surprised that's what I'm surprised about with Bell and Rodgers, that they haven't like really spotlighted a stable of amazing podcasts. It just seems like bad business that they wouldn't. Also, you're kind of like
figuring out how to sell it, and it's too segmented. It's too fragmented.
It's very sad. The content is very saturated. I mean, there's a lot of podcasts that probably shouldn't be on the air, right? Let's be honest, because
there's thousands.
The downside of being able to do whatever you want is that you don't have a producer because you can't pay one. You don't have a person maybe that's telling you, or maybe you're not a natural or something like that. Like being a good radio morning guy nowadays, you're like Craig McTavish. You're like the last guy that's allowed to skate around the ice without a helmet.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty decent analogy. You know what though? I mean, the thing is there's a lot of good radio shows out there. There's a lot of really good radio shows out there. And I don't think I'm the only guy doing what we do though.
There's another guy that's skating around without a helmet, but you know what I'm saying? Like there's nobody right now that if he wanted to plot a successful career in some sort of broadcasting would go to radio school and then figure out how to be a really good DJ on a radio station. Like, don't you think that window will be closed in at least 10 years or something like that, where that progression is probably not going to happen?
I honestly don't think we're ever getting rid of terrestrial radio, James.
Really?
That's interesting.
Well, I think we can keep it if it's commercial free and they just say Budweiser Radio and that's the sponsor. It's like, like the arenas, like the Scotiabank Arena, or whatever.
Well, there's radio is it's
the ads, man. We're a post-advertisement society in many, many ways. Maybe not with YouTube. But we are. We are in the sense that I will watch Netflix, but I won't watch TBS, even if the same movie is playing. Why? Because one has ads. I won't listen to radio because of the ads. I'll listen to podcasts. I am just trying to avoid ads. I get upset when the YouTube video doesn't allow me to skip the ad. Like I'm that guy. I just let me skip this shit,
Well, we're always going to have advertising.
But we get it in different ways now. Like
podcasting
Dean does that thing. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Podcasting has ads.
Well, Dean does that thing at the beginning of the show, but that's not like, welcome to Randy's car lot. It's not the same. Yeah. It would be funny if Dean did it like that, because then that would just add to the podcast content. Like it really would. If he did it live like that and he just like shilled for every company as sort of like a joke, I think that would be hilarious in a lot of ways.
It's funny because there is Positive Mike is asking whether or not radio ads are down, and it has they have gone down, but
the number of ads have gone up, but the ads have gone down.
Not significantly. I mean, and that shifts too, and that also depends on the radio station too, right? A lot of radio stations will charge. It just depends on what you're charging for a radio ad, right? And if you're trying to compete, you might actually what you might end up doing is you might end up in a competitive situation. You might bring down your cost, the cost of the ad, right?
Well, they're
But
doing that now. Big
and then
those
you just sell
companies,
more.
those companies that own those little tiny stations in like areas where I live, get the radio DJ guy to cut ads. Like for every local business that buys an ad, he's the guy in every single commercial.
That's the same way. I remember when I got into radio.
Pimping out. That is those. If you guys don't get like a premium that probably would pay more than what you get in a week for each one of those ads, then you're getting ripped off, right? Like
I used to go into work, and when I first got into radio, and the first couple of hours of my job was to go in and voice and produce commercials.
What a bunch of pimps, honestly. Whoever created that system is like a scrupulous individual. Like,
dude, that's why I got into management, because I was making dog shit wages, and at least the program director had a car, right? Like,
it was a Buick, but it was still a car.
Yeah, it was a Hyundai, but it was, you know what I mean? Like it was like the guy had a car, he could afford a car payment. And I was like, if I'm going to stay in this business, I can't spend the next 10 years of my life making $35,000 a year. Like it's hard. Like the front end of the radio business is tough.
It sounds like a restaurant. Like restaurant, there's a dividing line. I don't know if you ever worked in a restaurant, but there's a dividing line between management and like front and back of the house. Like if you're a kitchen guy or a waitress or a server or whatever, or hostess, like you have one lingo, and then management will walk by and all the front and back of the house people just stop talking, and the manager goes out of earshot, and then they start talking again. Like there's a dividing line. Is it like that in radio too, where it's like you're on air, that's our ecosystem, fuck you management, you make, give them the finger when they leave the room and shit? Because that bad? Because that, I've heard horror stories from Dean, just the anecdotal stories that he has.
I think every business has a version of management versus, and there is definitely, there's a narrative in the radio side of things. A lot of the problem with with radio right now is on both sides, on the talent side and on the management side, on the operational side, you're dealing with, it's eating its young. It's very difficult to find good talent right now because there's no training grounds anymore. There's a ton of voice tracks. They've killed the small market radio stations. If you, I had a friend of mine text me one time, he was on his way across the country, and he was driving to Winnipeg, and there's a famous DJ in the Edmonton market, Todd James. Todd the God. He's been doing this for 100 years. And
does he do this? It sounds like he would. No.
Todd's a good guy, and Todd's been working in the New Cap, now Stingray building for forever. And they own a ton of small market radio stations in the prairies. And he is on all of them.
He's syndicated? Really?
He voice tracks.
Wow.
And so my buddy was like, is Todd in every city in this? And just about, right? And
he's Krusty the Clown,
so he's taking all these jobs away from students that could go out there and learn their chops in these small markets. And
he probably makes less than 100K, wouldn't he? Because he's like that.
I don't even want to talk about what Todd makes because it's awful. It's embarrassing because I have an idea, and it's horrible.
And that's like, and it's such disrespect on every side, because you want your margins to be bigger, but you're doing everything to make sure your margins aren't bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just lowering expenses. I
don't know what the answer is, but you're dealing with that part of the radio business is happening right now. So young talent isn't getting an opportunity to learn, make mistakes in smaller markets and get better and work their way into bigger markets. So you're dealing with this huge hole in the industry with talent. And then you're also dealing on the management side of things where I don't know how else to put it. Being a program director of a radio station is the worst job in the business. It's hands down the worst job. And the guys that are left in it without getting it. Just,
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it.
Like The Wrestler, the movie. Sort of.
There's a handful of guys. My joke is there's 10 guys in radio that are program directors, and actually the joke is there's 11,
and like 300 stations, or whatever,
because they all have multiple stations, and there's more than that, obviously. But the joke is there's 11 guys, 10 are active, one's in rehab, and when he gets out of rehab, another guy goes in. And those 10 guys just shift around the business.
They all have gout.
They're all in the middle of a divorce. They're all alcoholics. Every program director that I have had in the last 10 years is the same guy.
Yeah.
It attracts a certain type of personality, and that's unfortunate because it's an awful job. Anybody worth their salt in this business that would want to do it quits, gets out of radio, and goes and sells insurance, because it's an awful job.
Stepping away from the business like first. Yeah. Well, one thing I've noticed recently, and look, I'm not a student of radio or anything like that, but I understand the romanticization of radio. I remember listening to my grandparents talk about listening to the war news report on the radio, and families gathered around to listen to like the mystery serials on Sunday nights or whatever it was. What's interesting is that I think that podcasting is in a way mimicking the way that radio was in like the 40s.
It is.
And I love that. I think that's like steampunk cool. You know what I mean? Like it's combining two generations and the content. Like I'm doing this thing now, just like helping out a local guy, and I'm reading news articles and ads from the 50s. And I'm doing it in the style that they would do in the 50s. And it's for businesses that and then I'm doing ads for businesses that exist now, but in the 50s style. And it's fun. It's like theater. It's more like theater than it's like radio. And I think it's neat the way podcast sort of straddles that line. I don't know. I thought it would be a natural fit for almost any radio guy until I heard you and Dean talking about how difficult a pivot can be, because it's not the same.
I find what I do on podcasts quite a bit different than what I do on the show. And it's not good or bad. It's kind of a different muscle. And I've said this out loud. And again, Dean and I don't agree on this because he's basically saying the radio's dead, and that in 5, I mean, he basically he's been calling for the death of radio now for forever. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to die. But I think it has a lot to learn. And I think we're making a lot of mistakes right now. We're not doing ourselves any favors. But what I do on the radio and what I do on podcasts is there's some differences, and it's different muscles that I have to work when I'm on a podcast with Dean or you, and when I'm on the radio, and I enjoy both. Right. And I've said this out loud. I think there's a lot that podcasts could learn from radio. And I think because there's a lot of awful podcasts out there. And I think there's a lot that radio could learn from podcasting. Unfortunately, both are at it's funny I live in this world where I have my foot in it, like I have foot in one and I have a foot in the other. And there's this ego about the radio side hates podcasting and the podcasting side hates radio, and they're not willing to sort of learn the strengths and weaknesses from each other right now. Does that make sense?
It does. I also listen, I think that a skill set is a skill set, and you're able to, like, smart people, versatile people can apply a skill set to several different careers. My wife she was like the top researcher at Nestle for a long time. And Johnson & Johnson before that, like top in her field. Like, and it was weird seeing someone who didn't have there was no hustle part of her job, in a sense, where she just had skills and she had experience. But I was always like, when the pandemic started, I was like, I bet you could translate some of these research skills to some sort of remote thing. And she was like, I don't know about that. And I knew she could. And it was weird because it was like, I see that in a lot of people who are trying to make this like jump from something not relevant to something relevant. And or, I don't mean it like in that way, but something on its way out for a lot of people, and something that's just on its way in infancy, and making that leap. It seems easy on paper almost. Of course, a radio guy would be good at podcasting. Why wouldn't he? But it's not as easy as you think.
No, it's not.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of, like Dean was saying, that he knows guys that have struggled. Like, do I need my own software? Like it's like
Well,
that bad, right? And
honestly,
yeah.
there's the technical side of things, and there's a ton of stuff involved in just getting yourself on the air, right? And then getting it in front of people so that they actually can see it, right? And that it's available. That's a huge part of it. And a lot of these guys don't know how to market themselves, right? But and that's one thing that I'm very grateful for is, and you and I are very lucky in that we sort of got thrown into the deep end of the pool, is how I put it, on the podcasting. This podcast that you and I do Monday to Friday with Dean on the Dean Blundell Network is one of the bigger and most listened to podcasts in the country. And I mean, we're lucky to be involved and given that opportunity. If we were just like, what would I do if I just had a podcast on my own? Like, you know?
Well, you do what I do and awkwardly talk to the audience because you don't want to. Listen, we're going to go soon, but I wanted to ask you a little bit. I knew a guy that would show up at every rave after party with a hand drum, and no matter what was happening, he'd find a way to fit in, and we loved him. And then he would leave. I was wondering, are you the harmonica guy that goes to places and just jams like the Pokeroo, and then like who was that guy? That was a fucking amazing like harp that man played. Like
I have, over the years, I started playing when I was young, and over the years I've been in a couple of bands, but I'm aware of what the limitations of the harmonica. Let's just say that. It's one of those instruments that's if you jump up on stage and you play all night with a band, it's tedious. People are not going to appreciate it that much. If you jump up and do a couple of tunes with a band, it's going to go a lot farther. Right? It's going to have more impact. It's an aggressive instrument, and it's a lead instrument, right? And quite often
it's a guitar solo.
It's a guitar solo. And quite often you're also dealing with bands and other musicians that feel like you're taking away from what it is that they bring to the table. So it's a tough instrument just to be on it. And that's all I play. I don't sing. I don't play guitar.
But I like the way you play it. You play it like you're in, like, you know, New Orleans in 1958. And I love it, right? Like it's.
I have a kind of a different sort of feel to it. But again, even though that I can play it, and I'm not very, like, I'm not very technical at it.
Are you self-taught?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
100%. I can't read music. I have no idea how to read or like none of that. I just play. It's total ear. I
tried for like 6 months to play the harmonica, and I was like, I can't do it.
My grandmother plays piano by ear.
Yeah.
Like on my dad's side, used to get up, sit, and just start playing. She was like 5'2" and completely round. And my dad picked up guitar, and then so I thought for sure I'm gonna have this, like, I'm gonna be this amazing musician when I was a kid. And I tried piano. Nothing. Guitar, nothing. Used to drive me crazy. My dad used to plug into the stereo and go, "Hey, look!" And within 10 seconds, be playing along with a song. And go, "Who is this?" Drove me nuts.
Yeah, those people drive me nuts. I could never bar. My fingers didn't move where they were supposed to move. And they try these finger exercises; they're great. And I'm like, I tried. And
my dad, total ear player on guitar.
Yeah.
Just picks it up and plays. And then I ended up having that same thing with harmonica. I go up on stage, and it's just like a pattern that I see in my head, and I can play along. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah, well,
I
people
got it.
should go and like find some of your stuff. Like they're hidden in the corners of like SoundCloud and stuff, but that you can find you pretty easily. If
There's
you
some
Google
stuff out
Lochlin
there.
Frost.
Yeah. I've played. Yeah.
All right. Listen, that was a good. I haven't done a show in 2 months, so this is like the inaugural show, and I just wanted to like
Do something easy, casual.
Yeah, like someone that I knew. Like I have all these like. I have all these big guests lined up, so I want to start with someone that wasn't that big, so that
I get it.
I'm just kidding.
I get it. No.
Someone I knew. I want to find a way. I'm determined to find a way to do this podcast because I think I'm a decent interview guy with like, with people that I don't know. I think that's one of my strengths. But my clear weakness is talking to the audience. I'm wondering, do you think I can find a way to do this podcast without having to talk to the audience? Can I format it in that way? Because I don't fucking want to talk to the audience. I'm sorry, guys, but I love you, but I don't want to talk to you. I want to.
Your biggest issue is that you're in your head too much.
And stop going analyzing for a second. Like
no, you are. You worry too much about things on a number of levels. And
so you don't think I could figure out a way?
No, I totally think you can. But I think you're already there. You're putting obstacles in front of yourself that don't need to be there.
Okay.
Does
that mean I should or shouldn't talk to the audience? What is your opinion on that?
You shouldn't talk to the audience. You shouldn't even worry about thinking about that it's a problem. You've created.
That's the answer I wanted to hear.
You've created this idea that this is an issue, that you have a weakness on it, and by doing that, it's getting in the way of you actually moving forward.
I don't think it is. The book's getting in the way of me moving forward.
The book you're writing with Blundell.
Bullard. I have to like literally crawl into the soul of Mike Bullard every single night and sound like him when I'm thinking to myself. That's what I do. So I imagine going from that to like, no, I think I need to figure out a way to balance my format for my podcast.
Yeah.
Like I've taken a break. I took a break because of that, because of the book. I was finding no time to do it. Like it is a difficult job. I have 2 part-time jobs. I write on the side, I do the podcast, and then I do the book. And it is not an easy thing. And I got 2 kids. You know what I mean? So it's not an easy thing when you want to spend time with the kids, especially, which I don't spend as much right now because daddy's always working, kind of thing.
The thing about this and about what it means to the audience is you should stop worrying about that. You should stop worrying about how the audience is going to interact or view you.
And right? I know why, right? Because if I stop thinking about that, I will deliver content that they will end up liking.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So the less you're worried about what it is that you need to accomplish on the podcasting or the interview side of things, that is, and again, I don't go into work every day worried about how I'm going to communicate with the audience on the podcast or on my radio show. My number one goal is to try to be myself and try to provide something that might be engaging, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think that's what people are looking for. And that's what I'm looking for. Like I'm looking for something that I feel like a part of, right? And those are the podcasts I like. And you have that. You have that in spades, James. I mean, so
I didn't know that ignoring the audience was an option, Lochlin. I really didn't. Now you made everything clear, and I'm not joking about that. And like, if that is what what it's going to take, that is fine. I often think, the House of Commons sign language person, I think it would be hilarious if she did the intro. No voiceover, no text on screen, just a woman signing for like 25, 30 seconds would be hilarious to me once.
On the procrastination side with the book, I mean, I have no idea to help you out on that.
Oh, I'm not procrastinating anymore. So a funny thing happened. I talked to a guy who has a bunch of books published, and I told him, like, look, I've hit a wall. I don't believe in writer's block. I just was never in the space to write that, and I couldn't figure out why. And this guy goes, he's fairly well known. I don't name him right now, but I'll tell you off air. But he was like, are you trying to get the publisher's vision, and so that you can go in a direction that the publisher will be happy with? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, don't do that. forget about what the publisher said, and then just go write the book, and you'll feel free. And that's exactly what happened. And so now I'm boogieing like 2,500 words a day or something. Like, it's going well,
dude. And I just gave you the same advice.
I guess so. Yeah.
In a roundabout way.
I don't know. It's going to be years before I probably learn that problem, if I ever learn it.
You put, and we all do this though. We are our own worst enemies. We put these obstacles up in front of ourselves, and it gets in the way of us moving forward.
Sometimes it feels like the place that provides good content has overlap with the place that does that makes it difficult for myself. Like, if I lose one, I might lose the other. I don't actually think like that, but as I think of it now, that's what it feels like. You know how like a poet or a good songwriter has a lot of pain in his life, and then when the pain goes away and he's done his sophomore album, he doesn't get it back again because his life is great. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, it's sort of like
happen,
that. Like,
unfortunately.
Yeah, like I'm a scatterbrain, and like sometimes it scatters in a direction, and I'm like, oh, there's the cookie, and I'll just like focus on that, hone in on that.
I will say, like, I don't know a lot about the craft of writing. I mean, I do a little bit of writing for the show, and I've done some writing in my past. Like, I did some newspaper writing, and I've done some blogging. And Dean tries to get me to write. Like, almost every second conversation I have with Blundell, he wants me to blog, right? Because I've done it a couple of times, and he's like, you could do this, you could. And I'm to me, I don't have enough time. Like, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it well. I don't want to do it half-ass. I don't know enough about writing to not like jump in with both feet. I'd have to jump in with both feet and really have to figure this out. But the one thing that I mean, I will say about when I read shit that you write, and I've read a bunch of your stuff, you come out of the paper. Like, I can, and that to me is a gift. That's a skill that not a lot of people have.
It's a tedious existence, Lochlin. Thank you for the compliment.
If you sit down and read somebody, though, do you?
I feel like that about Matt Taibbi.
Yeah.
When I read Matt Taibbi talk about the financial crisis, I feel like I finally understand it, and I feel like it's like talking to a guy in a bar, but in a way that he just taught me a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't know.
I feel and maybe it's because I know you now, but when I've read stuff that you've written, I always like, oh my God, that's James. I can picture him. He's coming out of the paper. And that's a gift, man. That's a perspective. You have something there. And I said this for years to a friend of mine in Winnipeg, and you've met him, Brandon. Brandon was trying to be all these things when I met him in Winnipeg, and he was sort of at that point in his life where he was trying to be more than the guy behind the board, right? Because he mixed music. And I remember sitting down with him shortly before I left to Edmonton, and we're still friends today. And
he wanted to jump from engineer to producer. Is that the idea?
He was doing everything. He was into TV. He's one of these guys that gets pulled 1,000 different directions, and he's still doing it to a certain extent, but at least I know for a fact now that he's very focused on being an engineer. That guy's gift was always sitting behind a board in front of a band and producing a band. And I saw it right away. And I'm like, you need to stick to that. You could be wildly successflike in this life just doing that. Because
that's a good thing for someone to tell someone like us, you know, like you and
I
are not the same.
You should fucking write. You need to write as much as you possibly can, because you're really good at it, man. Well, and I don't know if that means that doesn't mean you have to quit podcasting. I'm just saying, I'm just saying you fucking need to write.
No, I appreciate that. Well, you're right. Writing rhymes, honestly, as a white guy, taught me a very valuable lesson. And I don't always do it when I'm writing rhymes, but to write about what you know, you know, so that you don't fake like you're a gangster. I learned that when I was 14, and that's why those Island Boys really pissed me off. You know what I mean?
Have you seen the new video?
So much. I saw it on silent as I scrolled away from it. Yeah, I didn't.
Don't watch it. It'll just make you. It'll make you mad.
but it taught me. So when you say that's you coming off the page, to me, that the reason that I like hearing someone say that, other than the fact that it's a compliment, and who doesn't like your compliments, I don't like it all the time, but now it's good that you know I'm successful in writing how I speak, or writing what I know, and trying to put that on paper. I tried for a couple of years at least to be a little bit more highbrow, but I'm a fucking high school graduate, college dropout. What am I trying to do? Like, it's not being myself. And if I could be
And that's
half
radio too, man. That's the
that's what I
same
was just
thing.
gonna say. Yeah. Like,
It
you are
took
good at,
me.
I've listened to your show or your podcast, and I'm like, you sound so comfortable. Like, you
Yeah.
sound like you're at home or something. And
Yeah.
that's sort of what I like about you. We have some stuff in common. In a lot of ways, we're opposite, though, because I think that you know exactly who you are, and so do we. I think we know who you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There doesn't seem to be many fronts there. And if they are fronts, then you got the best poker face of all time, which you might.
I figured out very, very early on, like very young, and that's one of the things that that I try to pass on to my kids is just figure out who you are. It's been an ongoing, and I think we go through different stages in our lives where where you might struggle with who you are and being comfortable with who you are, but it's the number one thing, and I think that you can pass on to anybody, whether they're 10 or 20 or 50. Like, one, you got to figure out who you are. Two, you got to be comfortable with who you are, and then you got to stop worrying about what everyone else fucking thinks about you.
Yeah.
And that third one, man, that's a hard one.
I don't know if I'm ever going to get there. I'll have pockets where I won't care. Like, I don't.
That's a tough one, man.
Yeah.
But
I do.
The judgment piece. The judgment piece destroys people. It on all sides.
Yeah. Well, that's what we do.
Well, we do it to ourselves, and we do it to other people. And I think it's.
I know. I don't like that. Right. Like, we're so much about ourselves, and we have. It's all about the disproportionality of the offense versus the tidal wave of bullshit that comes to the person who makes the mistake. Because sometimes it's not an unforgivable mistake, but they did it to one person, and then all of a sudden millions of people are attacking them, and people are threatening them. And we love it for some reason. It's like the fight in the schoolyard, and then the pile on at the end, right? Yeah. Everyone piles on, and some poor schmuck at the bottom named Dino, gets a collapsed lung because everyone didn't give a fuck at that moment. I try not to think about it like that, but that's where we are right now. Maybe the collapse of Facebook will change things, because I'm pretty sure that's going to come up.
We've always had that judgment piece there, though.
It's to this extent.
I think we're it's on steroids now, right? Because
the comment section became the main audience that they're trying to cater to, which is awful.
Watch this Aaron Rodgers thing. This one's interesting to me because you got a guy that I don't think had too many enemies. Like, and enemies might not even be. Even if you weren't a Green Bay fan, you had to have respect for Aaron Rodgers. He's funny. He's good looking. He's good at what he does. You know what I mean? Like, there's all this sort of. I loved Aaron Rodgers.
It's always the quarterback or the pitchers that end up being full on MAGA. Did you notice that?
But it doesn't even matter whether or not he is what he is now. Watch this. Like, we're pulling him apart now.
I've watched clips. I haven't watched the whole thing. Like, I've watched.
I can't watch it. It's 39 minutes or 36 minutes. Somebody told me that I needed to go watch it. I've watched clips of it, like 4 or 5 clips. So I've seen maybe 10 minutes of it.
Dude, he cited Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
And he didn't. The thing that gets me is that he didn't think to himself, even if he loves Joe, and even if he's like, well, I thought it was good advice, I took it and I felt better, whether it was that or not, I don't know. He should be aware of optics, at least. Right now, Joe Rogan is kind of hot because, like, people are saying that he's like a little far right, and then he's appeasing the anti-vaxxers. You might not want to mention his name, and then he goes that. I mean, it's honest, I guess, so that you can take that away from it. But I don't think it was the.
Why are you okay being honest about being friends with Joe Rogan and taking medical advice from Joe Rogan, but then clearly lying about other things? Like,
What do
I
you
mean,
mean? What
it's
other thing?
so blatantly obvious that he's lying about being allergic to what's in the vaccine.
Yeah, see, I read that quote. I didn't see him say it, but I read that quote, and that quote
Because
it did
he's
strike me
taking
as like a little peculiar that now is when he's making that statement and not before, right?
he's
That would
using
make
it to prop up the narrative that he needed to not take the vaccine,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And at the
I
end of the day, this is a lack of understanding of your own ego. And that's the problem I've had with Joe Rogan. It's
yeah, I'm starting not to
listen,
like him, to be honest with you. I'm
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 starting
starting
to have a problem with him as well, and it's
I
unfortunate because it's one of my favorite podcasts. The problem with where Joe's at right now is that he got so caught up in them making fun of him for taking ivermectin, which, by the way, one, we all know, most people know that there's two forms of ivermectin. And not that we need to get in the weeds in this. Yes, there's a human, yes, there's a barn animal one, but the problem is that when you say ivermectin, you're going to immediately be made fun of for taking the horse fucking paste,
mhm.
right? And the problem I had with Joe Rogan is that he just got caught up on they're lying about me, they're lying about me, they're lying about me. Whereas what he should have done is what he should have said at that next podcast after this all blew up is he should have come on and said, "Listen, I made a mistake.
Yeah,
I
that
should
would be
not
a
have
hard
been
message.
promoting ivermectin
Mhm.
because there's going to be people out there that aren't going to understand what I said, and they're going to go to the ranch store and get the goddamn paste." And he
He
didn't
doesn't
take he's not accountable for that. He didn't take accountability for what he could have been making a mistake on.
But that's the Spotify difference because if he was still not on Spotify, he probably
He
either
would have
would say it or wouldn't care about the optics in that sense because there was no overlord. The weird thing about it is that not
there's
the
an
weird
overlord
thing.
now.
What the overlord is Spotify, right? But like the the oh sorry, I thought you said who was. But the thing is that he has this um he knows that the analytics are such that if he isolates or ostracizes even a little bit that right of center Trump light or full on Trump kind of right winger, that his audience share will decrease so significantly. Do you think there's no one from the left listening to Joe Rogan? It's been like 2 years since he's been like really noticeable in the mainstream, and when people go and see him, all they see is transphobia. They see like a musclehead talking about like or doing podcasts with Alex
You know
Jones.
what I honestly
I
think?
don't think he's got anyone on the left anymore, to be
I
honest.
think
Like,
he's trying to I think he's desperately trying to shoot the middle because
and he did it well when he wasn't trying,
yeah, and I think that's yeah, you know what? You're
just
right.
like you said
And
before. Yeah.
and so he's overcompensating on both sides, right? Because Rogan is the middle. He's the epitome of the middle. And
Yeah.
there's a ton of us in the middle. You're in the middle.
I was
You're not a
attracted to
left.
Joe Rogan because I was like, oh,
He's in the
finally
middle.
a moderate person, like
Yes.
reasonable, rational.
And I think now that he's over on Spotify, took the $100 million package,
Mm.
he's off all these other platforms. His numbers have gone down, I bet you significantly.
Oh, for sure.
I bet
I
you
don't
in the
watch him,
millions.
just because and I have Spotify on my phone. It just doesn't feel the same. I don't know what it is.
I'm guessing there is meetings now that he never had that he's not willing to talk about where they're having conversations about what he can do to stay relevant.
Mhm.
And the funny thing is with his numbers down, he is still very relevant. He still trends almost once or twice a week. I see him trending, top trending. But it's
Yeah.
always about the stupid shit he's saying now.
I know. That's the thing. And you know what? I feel like a Netflix is a better home for a podcast like that. I don't know if Netflix is ever going to go into that realm. I think they should. Maybe they are already, and I don't know. I don't think they are. But
I don't
you,
know if
but imagine going to Netflix and then hitting your screen or whatever. You go to the homepage and it's like, here's today's Joe Rogan podcast. I would do that. I would do that before Spotify. I don't know why. I have no idea what my logic is. It's like when I was younger, when I didn't want to watch movies on the computer, but if it was on TV, I'd make a point to watch it because it was in that. Yeah, I don't know what the reason was. It was a weird phenomenon with me. It was just like, oh, it was almost more exciting.
No, you're not alone.
Yeah,
A lot of people are like that, James. Like it's how it's what you're accustomed to listen to, right? Yeah,
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like listening to us on Dean's show when I don't make a fool of myself. And this is the part where I don't talk to the audience and I say goodbye to my guest. Can you say goodbye to my audience, Lochlin? Show me how it's done.
You know what? Honestly, now that you're putting me on the spot, I wouldn't even know how to do it. Like
right?
Like we sign off every day, but it's just a conversation. We don't think about it. I'm not trying to say goodbye.
Is that Hacksaw Jim Duggan? Is that where that came from?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. I needed this podcast to get out of the gate. I'm going to be interviewing a bunch of people in the next 3 weeks. I'll announce them when the dates get settled by their.
I'm glad I could help, James.
Yeah.
Keep writing, and this Blackballed thing. I think you're a great interviewer. There are going to be guests and situations that show up over the next, I don't know, over the next, whatchamacallit.
Yeah, I got Chomsky in a month again, and I'm like, what happens if this one bombs?
But the thing is,
then I break through it. I think
there's certain things, like we've created this thing with the Dean Blundell podcast. Mm-hmm. Like there's this sort of thing there. I can't really explain it. It's
like a horn of plenty, because that's how I got the book. And the funny thing is that someone was saying to me the other day, like, well, is that all it's good for? The podcast is like that you got your book. And I'm like, fuck no. If I didn't get my book deal or whatever, I'd still be just as serious about the podcast. I love it. I and because I am the way I am, I do have like once a week, like an hour. I'll be like, fuck, is it all going to fall apart? Is it, is it going to stay?
You're getting in your own way.
I know, but I want it to work so bad, and that is a neural pathway that I haven't learned to block yet. So
yeah, and the what I was going to say was this format that you have here is conducive for. There are guests that we have on the Dean Blundell podcast that I think this works even better for.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely. And like I brought a couple, like the Glenn Greenwald interview, I kind of regret bringing to, not because it was a bad show, but I think that that would have
been better on this.
That's what I think too. And the reason why I didn't put him on this is such a stupid reason in hindsight. It was because I wanted Chomsky to launch the Blackballed podcast, like episode 1.
Go back to Greenwald. I bet he'd do it.
Yeah, no, we've gone back and forth a little bit. I know his assistant now pretty well, named Marcos, but Glenn is just ridiculously busy, and I get it. We're not huge. As soon as they see Canada, a lot of the times it's like the music industry. It's like that with podcasts. I'm not kidding. It's like that with podcasters too.
You're not
Some
wrong.
People are not like really keen to go on a Canadian podcast. We're number 2.
Dean has built something though.
I know,
with this network.
I was telling him today on the phone just before this show that it's like he built the ecosystem, and I think he should be proud. And I'm surprised he does sleep 8 hours a day. I don't know how he does that.
There's a community that he's sort of created, and that's what I really like about being involved. Mm-hmm. I'm really enjoying it. I love my job. I always have. I love getting up every morning, going into work, and doing the locker room. But I'm finding equal enjoyment coming home, rushing home, grabbing a bite to eat, and running downstairs here to do the podcast with him every day. Man.
Me too.
I love it.
I'm with you.
I love it.
Speaking of which, I'll see you Monday on the podcast. Thank you for watching, live audience. That's all you get.
There you go. Good night.
See you guys later. Good night. Thanks, man.